Hello, I'm Chris, this is Gross Models, and this is my third Star Wars diorama, um, based on the ships you can see in ships and tanks you can see in front of you. I'm sure you've guessed. It's going to be based on Rogue One on Scarif. So, my basic idea is just to have the tropical paradise scene with the U-wing landed and, you know, just sort of there. A couple of tanks as background scenery on the road or whatever, and flying above the TIE Defender. Now this comes with a stand, but it's a rubbish black plastic one, so I'm just going to use some plastic transparent rod to hold that up above the trees. Talking of trees, I ordered a pack of palm trees. They come as a pack in various different sizes. So yeah, I've got some tiny ones and some huge ones and some in between ones. Now, I can't really tell exactly what scale they need to be. Obviously, in 144 scale, which these ships are all in, as you can see, the little driver of the tank there is the same scale as my little 144 pointing man. Obviously, the huge trees are too big. They're huge. But they might work as a sort of forced perspective type thing. The small ones are a bit too small. I think the medium ones are the right sort of scale, judging by the size of actual trees in the real world. But it's an alien planet, so you can get away with lots of different things. As ever, I'm going to be basing it on some foam core, which is nicely out of focus there. It won't focus on the edge of it because it's only the edge of the thing. There we go. It's plastic coated foam basically, so it's not very. It's fairly sturdy. It doesn't bend. It will crack if you try and bend it too much. But I shall be building a base up on this. I'm not going to use the whole thing. I think probably half. Actually, it might end up being the whole thing by the time I've got things on it. So let me just lay that down and get a vague idea. If I want the ship, obviously the two big ships are the main point of focus on this display. The tanks are just a sort of side thing. I think it's going to have to be the whole thing, actually. It's going to be one of the bigger dials that I've done. Obviously, I want some sand with the trees on it. So if I'm going for medium type trees, I've got top of one. They're obviously all around somewhere. I think that's come off the top of there, isn't it? There we go. So yes, these are fine. They're okay. They're obviously plastic and quite cheap, but with a little bit of weathering and dulling down of those, I think they'll work okay. So they will be basically around along the side. This will be landing on sort of the beach. I'll have some water effect down here as well. I might have some of the smaller trees, on the front, and maybe the bigger one at the back, just to add a bit of height to it. These are a bit flimsy. I was hoping I might be able to use some of these to sort of attach the thing, similar to how I did on the first Hoth diorama, to attach the snowspeeder using the cable. But I don't think that's going to work. It's going to have to be far too close to the middle of the tree, and then it's not going to look right. So I think using plastic rod, it's not going to be invisible, but it's going to be the next best thing. So that's going to be flying at a height, possibly over the water, maybe. We'll figure out the arrangements before I get onto it, and they'll be sort of in the background, perhaps on their way to. He's waving and pointing, so he's going to be leading that one into the battle, and the trees will be up and around. So I shall get a vague idea. I'll actually draw it out on here as to what's going to happen. Let's have a quick look at that now, actually. So if I'm going to have built up using some what I normally use, the diorama sort of plasticine. I can't even think of the word now. Plaster. That's it. I'll be using some plaster to build up around here. So if I want water from the edge to here, we'll have this coming in sort of around here as a bay that can come off down that way. So we'll have water here, and then the beach will come up around here, Perhaps there-ish. Maybe there. Then that have some more road there, maybe, and that. So this will land on the beach, perhaps there. Over this side, I shall be having this coming in. I'll put tie there just so I've got a vague idea, and it's sort of pointed like that. A vague sort of idea of what's going to happen. That's going to be over there. So we'll have the occasional tree. Actually, you know what? Because this is foam board, I can pop the trees into it. So let's get a couple of the medium-sized trees around various different heights and sizes. Can't have them all too close to each other or it will look wrong. One there. So yeah, I'll have a few clumps of trees along. Now looking at the stills from the film, they are of fairly standard heights, but I obviously haven't got loads of normal fairly standard heights. So I'll be having a variety of them going along like that. Maybe another one over that side there. With the sort of undergrowth there, sand here, water here. So that's the overall plan. They might be coming in over that way. That's a bit too close. I don't want to leave this too open, so I might make the water a little bit less. Let's have less water. So that's going to be the water. Then that might be the beach. So we'll go for that more sort of there. Then they're not so much clumped in over there. They can be coming through smaller trees in the distance. Although you can obviously view this from any angle you like. That will get me some smaller trees being used as well. A bit like that. I'll do the water effect down here, sand, and that seems to work for me, yeah. Maybe a couple of bigger trees, you know, in the far background behind the tyre. So overall plan is something a little bit like that. So yeah, I'll narrow it down, get it finalised, and then pretty much start building up the plaster around the beach scene, and then painting and putting the water in. So yeah, I'll see you when I get some of it done and show you some of the plastering. So I've just put some foam down and stuck it in place with just some basic PVA glue. I'll let that dry, then there'll be bits like this that need to be touched up and pushed back down and glued again, and I'll just basically cover bits of it in PVA. It gives a slight texture. It's not, it won't stay like a line there, but it will give a slight texture, I find, which is quite nice because it makes it, you know, look a little bit nicer, especially where it's going to be almost flat areas. The water, not so much. I need to do extra work with the water, so I'll come back and do some more on that anyway. But yeah, just by drizzling over, it sets it all in, seals it all in, so it's not going to move anywhere. And yeah, I basically followed the rough plan, so I'm still going to have the water down here and the water over there. The trees will dot in as and where looks appropriate. Over in this corner here, I raised up higher than before. You can't really see the height. If I do that quickly, you can get an idea as to the height of things. I've got some plastic tube that I'm going to support the TIE fighter on. Yeah, I'll have to leave this now for several hours for it to dry and then touch up and see where it goes. But it's getting there and it's started. That's the important thing. So I'll see you soon for continuing. So while I'm waiting for the PVA glue to dry on the base diorama, I've got a plastic tube, transparent or as transparent as they get, acrylic rod, which I'm going to be using to support the tie. Now I've ordered one that's slightly thicker than the hole in there to give it some stability. So basically I just need to file down the end of this so it's small enough to fit in there. So I'm just going to use a metal file and just rotate that as I'm going round. It's going to take a little while, but I'm not in any hurry. You can see that already discolouring and filing down a bit. So I'll get that done, get that inserted, and then that will be ready to go when the rest of the base is complete. And there we go, even quicker than I expected. That's now shaved down and is a nice, good fit in there. Not too tight, but tight enough. I'm going to leave this at that length. I don't know if I'm going to end up shortening it down a bit, but that gives me a good height to play around with. I can angle it, obviously, if I need to as well. So I'm happy with that. That's slightly angled already, so I don't know if that's because I've... Yeah, it looks like that's not quite at a perfect angle. But that's okay, because that gives me a little bit of play on the twist anyway. So there we go. That's that. Ready to go. Next up, I shall start plastering. Things have had a couple of days to dry and set down. Some of the corners are still sort of peeling up a little bit, just where the glue didn't quite set. But that's not too much of a problem. Now I'm going to be covering it all in plaster. What I'm using is the pack that I've had for ages, as you can tell. Lightweight hydrocal plaster. Sets quickly, apparently. Accepts earth color, it says. Yeah. Right, so for this, what I'm going to do is make it go everywhere when I open it. I'm going to go... No, it's not. Oh, just about not. Right. Yes, so this you just mix with water. So I'm just going to put some into a pot. Make sure you use a pot that you're not worried about keeping, because it's not going to be much good afterwards. Add water and stir it in. You'll end up with a gloopy, wet mess. Eventually, when you finish stirring it in, it's going to take a little while. I'll get all this stirred in, and then we'll start applying it to the kit. Right, that I'm fairly happy with. It's probably a little bit runny still. I've added a little bit more powder to make it a bit thicker than it was to begin with, but that's about right. You can see a sort of skin forming on it as I move it around a bit. It doesn't really matter how thick or thin it is. The thicker it is, the harder it will be to get into the right places. The thinner it is, the more it's going to dribble off the edges and things. I'm going to need more than this as well. This is just the first initial sort of test and seeing how it goes. So when I put it on the kit, you'll see it doesn't dribble everywhere, which is exactly what I wanted. What I'm going to do with this is basically start in the middle. I'm going to get it everywhere, even over where the water's going to be, just because it's going to create a nice uniform surface. So what I'm going to try and do, basically get a feel for how it's going. I'll notice it dribbling over that way, but I'm going to keep an eye on that and bring more over this side. As it dries, you've got a bit of a chance to sort of maneuver it around a little bit, but not too much. I'm just going to use my little stirring stick to sort of get some more extra coverage up the sides of slopes and things like that. I'm going to try and fill in some of these seams with it a little bit now, so I don't have to do too much with that later. But as you can see, this is not going to cover everything, and I do want a fair thickness. I don't want it, to be very, very thin, but I don't need it to be, massively thick either. So what I'm going to do is mix up another batch in a moment, after I've done a little bit of spreading on this. I don't want lots over everywhere. It's just a bit of back and forth. Let this dry and then do another coat, and then do another coat, and then another coat, depending on how thick you need it to be. Obviously the high points are going to take a little bit more, because it's going to want to naturally go down. So I'll get another coat, or maybe two, on this, and then we'll see how it goes. Right, I've been working this as it's been drying, just to sort of try and edge it into some of these sort of steps. It's not dry yet, although the thin bits are very, very dry. The middle bits are still lovely and moist. So I can still continue to sort of petal with it, basically. There is going to be another coat, obviously, going over the top anyway, because I've missed all the edges. But it's getting there. You can see some of these parts here are starting to look more slope-like rather than step-like. So it's getting there. It's just a case of moving it around, especially this big jump here. You can't really see it very well from that angle, but there's quite a cliff there. So I do want to ease that in to be more of a slope, which once it gets a little bit thicker in the solid areas, that will be okay. Another one over there, much the same, which I'm just gradually increasing the edge of to make it a little bit smoother. But all in all, as a first drop, it's done the job. It's fine. You could just leave it. There's a big pool of it there, you see. You could just leave it and it will sort of self-level a little bit, but I don't really want it to level, so I do need to sort of keep playing with it a little bit. Not much to film, so I'll see you in a bit. I'll do another coat before I come back as well, so you don't have to sit and watch all of that. Then we'll get to the interesting part. With it all plastered up and dry, I'm ready to put some colours down. Now I'm going to use some of the mecha colours that I've got. So I'm going to be using a couple of blues, got brown, sand, a couple of greens, three greens, deep green, dark green, and olive green. Most of this is going to be covered up anyway. The blue and the water is going to be the most visible, as it's the same, although I've got an idea of the texture. So I'm going to get some of this down, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Now, you may notice that I've got a black bin bag that I'm going to be spraying into. It's too big to fit into my spray booth comfortably, so I'll be doing this out here. So, yeah, see what it looks like once the colour is there. And as if by magic, here we have it painted. I've put the bits on there just to get an idea of the layout. The TIE Fighter, I have inserted my transparent rod on. I've got a hole there ready for it to go into. I think it's going to be lower than that. I know you can't really see the height of that angle. But that's probably a bit too high. But I won't know for sure when I get the trees in. That's just to get an overview of how it's going to look. So I'll move that out the way. The next thing I need to sort out is the not so much detail painting. Most of this is going to be covered in the shrubbery and trees and things I've got. The beach needs to be bigger. It looked all right like that, except when I put the thing on it and realised that I want that to be landing on the beach. I need the beach to be bigger. The little tank truck things I'm going to have coming up a sort of dirt road type thing. So I need a dirt road type thing as well. Now I'm going to be reusing, assuming I can get the lids off and they're all okay. Some diorama materials that I've used before, the desert sand for the beach. I've got some water and foam, which I'm going to be playing around with and trying to get the water to be looking right. And I have some wet mud from AK. So I'm going to try the wet mud first. I'll try and get the pot open and see if it actually opens and if it's not all dried up and horrible. I'm just going to get some sort of behind the tank. So that's the first place to start. Well, the wet mud is still wet and muddy. I'm going to use an old knackered brush that is going to be even more old and knackered afterwards. Give it a little bit of a stir up. Then get some down here. I'm just going to make a sort of trail that's going to be basically sort of tank size, as if they use it occasionally to get across and in here a bit. It also gives me something to base these tanks. So I'm going to be doing, they're sort of hover tanks, so they're not really going to have tracks, but they're going to have something. So I'm just adding this, sort of stippling it on as a texture as well, over the top of this sort of area. It might not work, and if it doesn't work, I can always go over it again with the green. But I figured it's just going to be another addition and difference to the current format. I reckon they're probably, in my mindset anyway, they're going to be coming in and down to the beach, and then there'll be a sort of area where they sort of turn around and dump their stuff and things. So pretty much like turning circle in there. Not an exact anything, just sort of stippling around where they've messed up the surface of the area. every time they come in and go out, around, down. So I'm thinking that's going to be sort of like that, matching with everything. Especially as the beach is going to come back up a bit further than that as well. Right, rid of some of this. Dry brush out the edges a little bit. So it's not a definite end point anywhere. I think that probably just about do it. I want the whole edge to be a bit blurry as well. There, middle. I'll get some of the big loopy stuff in there as well. Really messed it up driving around. And that will do that. I'll touch it up a bit here and there. But that's that. Next up, I shall get some of the beach down. So I've gone around and airbrushed a little bit of the edges of the sand and water, with the water and the ground to blend it in a little bit. But I had a little bit of lift up of some of this, so I put some PVA down just to stick that down in place. And look, the corner I've started. I'll show you what I've been doing. I put a little bit of masking tape across there, and then I'm going to use some Mod Podge. It's the first time I've used it in anger, so I don't know how it's going to work. I was going to test on just that corner, but it's going to take days and days for it to dry. So I figured I might as well just jump in and do the whole thing. Now this is, it's almost like PVA glue, and what it does is it dries clear. So what I'm going to do is pour a fairly thin layer, but it's got to be thick enough that it's going to go to the edges and cover everything. Basically, the thicker the layer is, the longer it takes to dry. A little bit of drip off there because it's going to dry here anyway. So that should hopefully be enough and give me coverage enough. I shall use the tail end of my messy paintbrush just to sort of spread it a little bit to get it to cover. It's not thick, but it's not thin. It's a difficult thing to sort of describe. It is a similar consistency to PVA glue. So if you ever used any of that, you'll be aware how it sort of works. So it will give a flattish surface, but not perfectly flat. And hopefully, I say, will be transparent, so it will leave the underneath looking the same. Smear that a bit so it doesn't look like big blobs. So yes, that should be it. What I'm going to do is get a little hairdryer on it to give a little bit more sort of texture and wave effect, and to start the drying process a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I will be adding some other water effects to the top of this as well. This is pretty much just a base to give us an edge, something to work through from. So pretty much that's how I'm going to leave it now for days, and we'll see what happens. This I've put a bit of over. It's not actually touched, but it has dripped into it a couple of times. That's just to hold these sides up a little bit. That one I've got some things put behind it to stop it from flying off back. So we'll see how that looks in a few days. Well, that's been left now about a day and a half. So it's starting to come through. The blue is coming through a little bit. There's still a lot of white there, but for now I'm happy. I'm going to have to leave it for a bit longer. I did consider starting to do some of the
groundwork around here, but I think I don't want to build up the height too much while I'm waiting for this to dry, because I still need to work on the water afterwards. So I'm just going to have to be very, very patient and leave it until that's it, and then I can carry on and build the height. Right, I'm not very good at waiting, so while I've got the Mod Podge to dry, I've put some of the models in a rough sort of place, and I'm going to add some of this woodland forest ground cover. Now, I've not used any of this before, so it's all going to be a learning experience. I'm going to get some of this around the muddy area, and obviously glue the models in place as well. So I'm going to try this and see how it goes. I'm just using basic PVA, just some normal Elmer's glue, white glue, just PVA glue to stick it onto. A little bit under the bottom of there for the little tank to stick onto. The glue obviously is white but does dry clear, so it doesn't matter if it's sticking out from the edge a little bit, because it's not going to matter. You're not going to be able to see it afterwards. And obviously I am adding the scenery material to it as well, so we'll get that stuck down where it needs to be. As you can see, I've got two different packs of this woodland scenery stuff. They both appear to be the same. They came from different people, different suppliers. One was in a box with other stuff that I shall be using soon. But we'll just see what happens. I'm going to basically just open it up, sprinkle it over the top of the glue. Now the glue obviously will then dry and dry clear and stick most of it down. Some bits obviously won't be touching glue and might well come loose. I'll just basically shake them off. If they're in any fit state, I can reuse them, but if not, then it's wastage. But it's just the way it goes. I'm just going to put this in and around, not really being careful where it goes, just so it goes, well, it'll only stick where the glue is anyway, but just need to get it in the right place. Try not to drop everything all over it. But yeah, once we've got the side down, we'll see how it looks, and if I need to come back in, do any more over the top once it's dry, we'll have to worry about that then. There's not really a lot I can do until we see how it looks. But as a first try, it's worth going. I think I'm going a little bit heavier now, just to make sure I get some coverage over the top of it. There's also some, not quite a variety in this packet. Some of it's sort of thicker, heavier stuff, and some of it is very fine bits, which if I'm just picking them out on the top, I'm not getting the fine stuff. I'm just going to end up with loose bits in the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to try to keep it over there without covering over the rest of it. If it does go over there, it's not going to stay there, because obviously there's no glue there. So I'm going to do another layer a little bit deeper in. Probably could have put the glue down first and just done it. You've got a long time before this glue dries. You don't have to rush to finish it off quickly. I'm just going to get it down, and then I say once it's dried and the glue has disappeared, we'll see how it looks. I might have to put some glue over the top of it, looking at how this goes, but we'll see. I'm not going to glue this in place yet, because I still need to work on the water. It was just to get the scale and looking right. The paint is a little bit delicate. It's sort of coming off a little bit, so I'll have to go over that again. But this is all going to be covered over by shrubbery and underbrush anyway, so I'm not too worried what happens with that at the moment.
I'm still waiting for the white to go away. It's getting there. Every day it's a little bit bluer. The corners take a little bit longer, but there are still some. I can't wait. It's too much waiting. So you may have noticed I've added some grass. It looks quite good. I haven't got a static grass applicator, so I'm doing it the easy and not as efficient way, but it still works. Now the way I'm doing it is using normal PVA glue. I'm just putting down. I'll do this edge bit, and I'll fill in the rest another time. I'm just putting some glue down like this. Basically getting good coverage, making sure I get everything covered. Now the glue will dry transparent, so it doesn't really matter if you go over the edges too much, but you don't really want to get it everywhere. So, I mean, you want to get it everywhere that you want to cover, but you don't want to get it where you don't. So there's that. See, I've actually got some problems seeping down there, so I'm going to use a piece of, because I don't want all of this all the way down there. But I do want some, so we'll see how it looks and see what we can do to tidy it up. Now I'm using some grass powder, basically. It's tiny little blades of grass, which seem to come clumped up. So what I do, whether it's correct or just the way I'm doing it, get it in my fingers and then I gently agitate it in my fingers. So bits drop off and it covers, drops into the glue, and then when the glue dries and evaporates, it just leaves the grass. Obviously, it needs more than that. I need to go backwards and forwards a few times with another sort of handful, fingerful. Some of it will fall off when you turn it upside down, even after it's dried, because it won't all be landing in the glue. But most of it does, and it seems to look right. It doesn't stand up like it would if you use that grass applicator, but it does the same thing. I'm also using some different colour as well, a little browner. Not as much with that. I'm just putting a bit in here and there, just so it doesn't look all exactly the same. Dropped a big blob there. Pick that up. Some of that will be able to be used. Some of it's going to end up with a bit of glue on it, so it won't be much good. Much blob. So that's wasted, but not. I've got quite a lot. So yeah, just going to put on a bit of this other colour, and then I shall go back. Some areas are going to be heavier with this colour, some are going to be just the green. I'll go back to the green again, and just spend a little time making sure I get some fairly good coverage. You can go over it again if you need to, and I'll see what happens when that. There we go. I'm going to leave it there. The middle bit I don't need to cover because it's going to be covered with more bigger shrubbery. I've touched up a couple of other areas. I shall now leave it to dry again. I don't want to go back in with any heavier stuff until I've sorted out the water. So I will now move it out the way. I'm going to put it somewhere else. Give it a day or so to dry with the PVA, and then just forget about it for a week to give this a chance to actually come through and properly blue, and then I can finish the water effect, and then we'll start putting on higher trees. So, see you soon. After about a week of sitting here waiting for it to dry, it's dried mostly. There's a couple of little patches still in the underside over this side where it was very thick, but this has come through pretty much transparent and clear. You can see the water through the bottom there. Now, there's, I think, 3 more stages that I'm going to go through on this water effect. I've done one of them down here. So I'm just going to turn this around and continue with step the second on here. It's once again another layer of Mod Podge, but this one applied more thinly with a brush. So what I'm actually going to do is get a blob out and spread it around and stipple it. This is just creating, where this is obviously quite flat and smooth, this is going to make it less smooth, more watery. So I'm going to cover all of it in that, and then add some of the wave effects that you can see still drying over the other side. This thin layer will dry in next to no time, but the wave layer will take a bit longer, as you can imagine. Now this, I think I'm going to go a little bit beyond where the water actually ended on the beach here, because I don't want that distinct sort of water edge. It's going to be a little bit more wavy around there. and this is going to be quite random, not aiming for, you know, a perfect finish by any stretch. So I'm not going in lines particularly. I'm going a bit over, a bit thicker in some places, thinner in others. It's just to create a random effect like what water would. So that's pretty much covered everything. Just going to get some more around the edge there. I'm going to trim down the edge as well to make that look a little bit better afterwards. Now the trouble with doing this stippling is you do get a lot of bubbles. Now I haven't got a flamethrower or anything like that to remove the bubbles, so I will be going through and sort of popping a few of them off here and there. But first of all, I'm going to create some more waves. I'm going to have them going sort of similar to how they were across there. So I'm going to create a heavier layer of the Mod Podge across there, and another one a bit further down. Not a dead straight line, obviously, because that's not the way water works. I'm going to create some twists and turns in it. Then I think another coming across here is probably, I don't know, I'm guessing at scale and how it looks and how it feels. So pretty much like that, I think. Now comes the loud part. I'm going to be using a hairdryer, and I'm going to try blowing to get rid of a lot of that from there because I don't need that anymore. I'm going to blow in that direction as if the waves were sort of blowing up the beach. So I'm going to mute my microphone. I'm going to grab my hairdryer because otherwise you just hear this. And that's a lovely coloured microphone. It's my special modelling microphone. So I'm going to mute and do this and then come back. Okay, not so much a mute as in the system crashing, but the recording was saved, so you can still watch that last bit. Otherwise you wouldn't be watching it. But yes, I've used the hairdryer even to give a little bit of blow onto that and to warm it and help it set quicker. The other side is still setting. The white will disappear, but I will be adding some different white back to it afterwards. So once again, I'm going to put this aside until this has dried. Hopefully that won't be as long, or it won't be nearly as long as it was last time. It's going to be a few hours, possibly, maybe a day. But once that's dry, I'll come back in with the next stage. I might actually, before I come back to you, increase this a little bit, add a little bit more once it starts to dry and I can get a feel for how it starts to look. I might increase that a little bit thicker, but I'll see you when it's dry. So that's a little bit of backwards and forwards with the Mod Podge. I've done some more stippling in here and blown it with the airbrush to give an even more textured effect. Now I'm going in before this goes transparent so I can still see where it was. I'm going to be using some of the AK transparent water gel, which is very similar to Mod Podge. It works in much the same way, but it's a slightly different effect, if you like. So what I'm going to do is, again, basically build up these ridges a bit and bring that backwards from there like that, and then I'm going to use the airbrush and blow it into the wave formation again, just so I get that sort of crest across the top there, and the compressor can kick in, so you can hear that lovely as well. So I'm going to keep blowing that for a bit just to get that proper sort of crest of the wave. Now this first one is going to be the biggest because it's the one closest to the beach, so it's the one that's going to have the biggest crest. So I'm carefully letting it dry in that raised edge formation that you can't really see from above, but you'll see it when it's finished. So I'll let that dry a little bit from there. There's a little touch more I need over this side where that water isn't quite there yet. Blow that across that way a bit, and then I'm going to come in and do the same on the other waves, all the way across here, and the other one as well. So when all that is done on both sides and dried, then I can come in with the white, the colour, the final edge piece. So I'll show you that when I'm doing that. Well, it's not gone completely transparent yet, but it's getting there, and there's no point in waiting. I know it's going to work. It's going to go there, so I might as well continue on with some water foam. Now, what I've done on this, I've done in the top corner. I'm going to add a little bit more to that as well, because I don't like this sand bit down there, so this is going to get a bit more foamy. I'm just using a small, old, knackered brush and just spotting it on, like you can see there. And that creates a sort of a seafoam, watery type finish, and will hopefully, when it all dries, make it look like waves. So this needs to go basically all around the edge. I'm going to cover most of the sand that I've got the water over the top of, because it didn't quite finish and look quite how I'd intended. I'm going to leave a little bit, maybe. I'll see what happens when I come back. So I shall cover all of that, and also the tops, the edges of the waves here. So this will stay looking nice and bright and white. I'll do the one down here that's sort of already faded, so you get an idea of how it's going to look. Well, you can see over there how it's going to look. But yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to continue on and do that, and then we'll be able to progress on and get some more height built into it. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry, the foam to dry on the diorama, we're on to the penultimate addition to the display. I've got some palm trees. I've got a couple of different varieties in lots of different sizes. Now, I'm not sure exactly which one is going to be in scale to the actual thing, but I'm going to be using a lot of them. What I'm actually going to do is cut down some of the very big ones, so they're not quite so big, but they've still got a slightly different sort of shape top and slightly different size top to the others, which adds a little bit of variety without being too overpowering. So I'm just going to take a bit off the bottom of these, but before I do any of that, these are quite cheap and they look it. So you've got, let's show you one of the worst ones. There we go. Look, big bits of flash and rubbish on the sides there. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time with a sanding stick, just trying to get rid of the seam line down the back here, and just generally sort of tidying it up a little bit. It's not going to be too apparent. It's not going to be too much to worry about, but it does need to be improved a little bit. Even that, just once the big bits are flaked off, just makes it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to be adding some paint and shade to these just to, again, vary them up a little bit, make them look a bit different. You're not going to be able to see very much of the trunk anyway, but say they all need a bit of tidying up. That's yeah, not ideal. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time sanding down these and getting them look right, and as I say, cutting down the height to get a better balance. I might not use the very tiny ones, or I might put them in a couple of them around just to add a bit of height and variety. So I'll tidy these up, and then we'll see about putting them onto the base. Okay, there's some trees done. I've given them a quick painting over to make them look a little bit less plasticky, but they still need a little bit more work. But I don't know how much more work, because I don't know how much is going to be visible. The trees at the moment are just pushed in. They've got little posts on the bottoms of themselves, which I've just pushed into little holes that I've made, just to see if I like the arrangement, and I pretty much do. I know you can't see it very well from above, but that's pretty much how they're looking. And they're falling because they're not glued in place yet. That is the next step, gluing them in place. And then I have some shrubbery and painted fingers where I've been painting them. This is basically going to cover the entire interior of that side and some bits over that side as well. I've got a few different colours and sort of textures, but basically it's going to be creating some underbrush even in between the trees. So that's going to be covering up, I say, the bottom chunk of each trunk. so I don't need to worry too much about how that looks. Once I've got these all in and glued in, I'm going to make a watered down PVA solution and sort of drip that over it to fix it all in place, and then we can see about some touch-up painting. So yeah, I'll get these glued in place. I think I'm pretty happy with how they are. I might need to adjust the angles of some of them here and there, and get some of this glued in around it. So I can't film that because I need to be turning it around and angling and stuff, but I'll get some in and then show you how it's going. And there we have undergrowth. You can't see it under the trees, but trust me, it's there. It looks all right. The trees aren't set yet, none of it's dry. So I'm going to spend the next hour manipulating and manoeuvring the trees to get them in the right sort of angles and places and sort of hold them in place while it dries. But I'm happy with how it's come out. It's getting there. It's almost completed now. Once I've got the trees set and everything in the right place, as I say, I'm going to water down some PVA and spray that over the top of the shrubbery to make sure that holds in place, because a lot of it's probably not touching much of the glue underneath. But I think that will do it. And then a little bit of touch-up painting and tidying up the branches of the trees. And we should be almost there. So I shall see you very shortly. Wish me luck for the next hour or so, just getting bored holding trees in place. So I'll see you soon. There's one other thing I've got to do before I get it all set, and that is insert the TIE fighter, TIE interceptor. It's around there somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is. So I'm going to poke around and see if I can find the hole. There it is. I knew it was around there somewhere. So that's going to be going in there a bit like that. I think I'm going to have it coming in that sort of direction. So that, once again, I'll get some more shrubbery to set around that, and that should hold it in place quite nicely. I'm going to stay with that height. I know you can't see the height, and I'm not going to tip it up again, but it's about that far above the top of the trees, about that far over the top of the trees. So yeah, it seems to be working. That's it. I shall see you soon when this is dry, and we'll see how it looks at an angle. So we're approaching being completed now. The trees are mostly stuck in place. They're not terribly sturdy because there's not much to support them really. There's a little post and a little glue, and yeah. So I've been gluing them in place. I've used some of this watered down PVA glue, which is very runny. You can get it in the right place. I'm going to do a little bit more with some slightly different greenery. So basically just putting off some of this, getting some glue on and around underneath it, and then building that up in and around. I'm trying to get some around the bases of trees so it creates a little bit more support, but I think it's just going to be a very delicate diorama because the added height that I needed and wanted with the trees doesn't bode well for how they're actually supported in place. So yeah, I think it's just going to have to be I mean, it's not going to be a play diorama anyway. It is only for putting on the shelf. As you can see, I've still got some sticks holding some trees in place. So yeah, I'm just going to continue with this. Once these are on or dropped, once these are on and around, let's say in a few different places, trying to build up a little bit more support, I'm going to give the tops of the trees a little airbrush in some green, just to get rid of some of the plasticky from them. Just give them a little bit of an added paint. And I shall be adding a little bit more of the sort of grassy ground cover over the top of some of this shrubbery. Once that's done, I'll get a final shot of it and I'll get some pictures and put them in the video, because I can't really tip it up now because all the trees will fall over. So I'll get some shots from different angles and put them on the end of the video, and we'll see how it looks when it's completed. And that is that. That's all finished. I'm happy with how that's come out now. The trees are all standing up on their own. I can indeed tip it and tilt it so you can see it from a couple of different angles. I'll put some pictures up in a moment of the finished thing from a couple of different angles. And that's that. I hope you've enjoyed the build. It's one of 3 that I've done so far. There are more coming. I've got another one planned that I still need to build the models for, but I'll get to that soon, sooner than it's taken me to get to this one. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't, let me know. If you have, let me know. I'll see you soon for this and other builds. Thanks for watching. Bye bye for now.